Hello, this is Saul Luckman. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Conversations on Saul Luckman Uncensored, sponsored by snooze2awaken.com, resources for lucidity. For more information about my work, including a lot of fantastic free content, check out www.crowrising.com. I'm also on Telegram now, and I'm sharing daily truth bombs at https t.me/Saul Luckman. Now, today I have a new guest and somebody whose work absolutely fascinates me. He's a fellow Crowe also. I have Jason Crowe with me. How are you doing, Jason?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I appreciate you being here. I know you're very busy with a lot of projects at the moment. I just want to let people know that we're going to be talking about Quartal and Court and Cortectors and all things with an interesting letter these days. So I have been following your work since I hooked up, on some interviews with Mike Winter. I heard you give a really good interview to Sayer G not too long ago, and obviously you're very high octane in terms of the technical aspects of all of this. But I was just wondering if you would just give listeners, 5 minutes or less, just a little bit of your background and lead it into to Qortal and let people know kind of what this is, because it's an amazing technology, an amazing thing that literally could be world and planet changing. And I don't want to play that down, because I really believe that this is a big deal. So let me give you the floor for a couple of minutes here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've given this little rundown quite a few times on a couple different interviews, so I've kind of gotten a little bit better at doing that without going into too many details. So hopefully we'll give it a shot here and see how it goes.
Right.
I have been an IT guy basically my whole life. I got my first IT job when I was 16, right? And so I've always been into building systems and networks and stuff like that. So it was a natural progression for me to move into the blockchain space. When I first got introduced to it, I saw that, wow, I could use my computers that I have at home to mine cryptocurrencies and make money that way. And I found mining to be very interesting, right? And so I got into that. And then soon after, I realized that mining really, it just leads back to basically the same thing that we already have, right? Where the people with more money can buy more hardware. And so they can be the ones with the bigger footprint on the network and earn more from that. And so from like
And
2013
control the
and
network,
on,
right?
right? Yeah, like in a certain way, yeah. There's a couple different methods that the network is actually controlled in POW type systems, but one of those methods is absolutely hash power, right? So you have more influence on the network, and you actually you earn more, and you have a bigger footprint on the network overall in a multiple different ways, right? So it just leads back to the people who have more money are the ones who are able to buy a bigger position on the network. And I thought, in the long run, that's going to end up being basically the same thing that we have now, just built on a blockchain. And I did not really like that, because I knew that the blockchain technology itself was revolutionary. And what that could do for the world is basically rebuild everything that runs on technology to run with a blockchain backend, which would make it unhackable, unable to be messed with, and allow everyone to have equal footing on the network if built correctly, right? So from 2013 on, I led a couple different crypto projects. One of them was innovative. It used hard drive space to mine instead of hash power, which is just CPU power running 24/7. And using that hard drive space to do the same thing, it still leads to basically the same thing. Yeah, it's easier. You can buy hard drives cheaper. But it still leads back to the people who have more hard drive space being the ones who have more power on the network. And so that was an underlying issue.
Mining, is that right? That's
Yeah,
still
POW mining, any type of POW mining. POW is proof of work. It's just different types of proof of work, but any type of proof of work leads back to the same thing, where the people who have more money can buy more hardware, and they get more of an imprint on the network, they get more influence on the network, and they earn more. So it just leads back to the same thing. And so all of these POW coins do the same exact thing in that regard. And so the idea that we had for Qortal, which I started coming up with some of the concepts and had a bunch of different really smart people helping me come up with concepts. And we just, put this whole thing together and decided that there needed to be a new platform that was built. It needed to be built from scratch because there are no others that can do all of the things that we wanted Qortal to be able to do, which is essentially become the new infrastructure for the world. And I know that's like a really crazy, huge goal, right? But with a blockchain backend and infrastructure built in a correct way like this, it actually leads to something where every individual has individual sovereignty. They can literally build their own future in their own way, and their contributions towards the network in multiple different ways will then lead to what they get out of it, right? And so that is really the main concept of Qortal, is to do that, to become an infrastructure platform for the world to use, to allow anyone to come in, regardless of how much money they have or how much they think they can spend on hardware. All of that stuff is out the window. All they need is any computer, which we have built little devices on Raspberry Pi 4s that we call a Cortector, all open source. Anybody can build them themselves. We even give them the 3D printer files if they want to print the case themselves. You can do that with a little tiny device like that. Or you can use your desktop computer, you can use a server in the cloud, you can use your laptop, whatever you have, right? So we wanted it to be totally open to anyone to be able to come in and actually be able to earn influence on the network that then is used in the voting system to help decide the future of the platform in multiple different ways, right? So it was really a lofty concept. And in some of these, the cases, some of the concepts, I didn't even really think that some of these things were going to be able to be built because they were so idealistic, right? But the absolutely amazing developers that I've, handpicked from here and there, and some of them have come in to find us, and we just built this team. And I use the term team very loosely because it's literally a community developed project, and it will stay that way. And it's built to outlive all of us. So we have this amazing team that just keeps growing because it's everybody in the community can become part of the team and start contributing code and so forth. But we managed to make this platform into a reality. It's been about a year and a half now that the platform's actually been live. And a couple days ago, actually, we made one of the main features of the platform, which actually allows for the rebuilding of the internet to start taking place.
Yeah,
and that is the Quartal data network.
Days ago, right?
Yeah. We actually literally made history. Yes, we are the only blockchain that can do this. We are the only data network that functions the way that we do, with a blockchain backend that secures everything and allows the data hashes to be on the chain so that the data is then secured and verified by the blockchain, but without the data itself actually being on the blockchain, because then that leads to the blockchain actually growing out of control, right? You can't have the entire internet on one chain.
Yeah, about this because I think a lot of people, they know the term blockchain.
Oh, hold on a second. My headset has been doing weird stuff. Talk again.
I was going to say, a lot of people are at least somewhat familiar with the concept of blockchain, but you made a point of saying that we needed to kind of base what we were doing on a blockchain. And I was just wondering if you could let people know why that's an important first step. And then what distinguishes the way you're using the blockchain from, let's say, a Bitcoin blockchain.
Okay, so the blockchain itself, in the terms of a typical blockchain, right, is just a ledger. It's an immutable ledger that only moves forward. So you can only add to it. You cannot remove previous things. So transactions happen. That's all done in a block. That's why it's called a blockchain. So a block of transactions happen. That gets secured into time forever. A blockchain cannot be hacked. There's no centralized database that can be hacked, that can be attacked and grabbed information from. The decentralized database just does not exist. And it leads to basically an unstoppable machine that can just run and run and run and run it and keep track of history forever, right? And what Bitcoin uses a blockchain for is all for financial transactions. All that Bitcoin does is basically be money. It is what I like to refer to as digital gold, right? And so Bitcoin is literally just a financial instrument that utilizes this technology to secure the transactions in a financial sense. And that's great. And that is what, spurred the development of so many other things, including Qortal, because without Bitcoin, none of this stuff would have ever happened. Nobody would have realized that a blockchain is a thing, right? So they came up with that concept. Satoshi Nakamoto, they, he, whoever they are, right? Came up with this concept, which is a great concept. It could actually lead back to the power getting redistributed to the hands of the people. Now, again, the problem comes in when the idea was that everyone was supposed to be able to run this on their individual computer. And the SHA-256 algorithm that Bitcoin uses initially was run that way. It was run on a computer, on a CPU, on a regular computer, which was fine.
I remember
but those. The problem is a lot of smart people in the world, and they came up with the ability to run this on then graphics cards, and then what are called FPGAs and ASICs, which are application-specific integrated circuits, which all those things do is sit there and run that algorithm. So those things are a lot more efficient at doing the same thing. So then you can make these machines that's all they do, right? And so now that's all you can run the Bitcoin network with, right?
That was like a proof of work arms race.
Right, exactly. And it led to a whole bunch of things happening, a bunch of companies popping up selling these things, a bunch of scams happening. I was involved in both of those things. I bought a bunch of mining hardware from companies that ended up working out, and a bunch that ended up not working out. I've lost countless money in this space in different ways, from centralized exchanges getting hacked, which is another thing that Qortal addresses, and like all these centralized things, right? And so the real thing with blockchain is that you can get away from having things that are forced to be centralized. And if you can get away from that, then you no longer have any middlemen. You no longer have any unnecessary fees in between. You no longer have anybody verifying anything on anyone's behalf. You can literally do direct P2P communications, direct P2P transactions of all different types, and make it without anybody in between saying, oh, I get a cut of this for whatever reason because I happen to be the one who runs this website that facilitates this for you. All of that can be out the window, replaced with an underlying infrastructure platform that runs on everyone's computer. Everyone has a copy of the ledger. Everyone can verify what's going on without the need of anyone in between helping make that happen, right? And so we can get rid of all kinds of what I consider to be completely unnecessary things, right? And if we can do that, it leads back to a world where if I'm dealing with you and I'm communicating with you, then I'm only communicating with you. I'm not communicating with you through a server that's also grabbing our communications and potentially finding out what we're saying, potentially recording those communications, yada, da, da, da. There's no server in the middle doing any of that, right? And that is what the main functionality of a blockchain really, to me, signified, right? Is the ability for us to get away from having to have everything run by companies on centralized servers, and just making that not necessary anymore, right? And so that is the main functionality.
You're able to basically disintermediate all of those middlemen and create a very different structure, architecture for this new quote unquote internet.
Yes, exactly. We no longer need servers. We no longer need any sort of service provider in the traditional sense. Now, that doesn't then say that service providers of the new internet can't then become a thing and provide services in a different way, but you don't need that intermediary in between facilitating anything for anyone. You can just make sure that these transactions take place directly from you to the person who you're dealing with, which allows for, complete and individual sovereignty for everybody. And that is the main focus for Qortal, is to allow this to take place on more than just economic type transactions, right? Not just financial stuff, right? We wanted to add in the functionality for web hosting, communications of all different types. Like, we will be able to do this video like we're doing right here, right now, on top of Qortal in a Q app in the very near future. And so we will be able to eliminate the need for things like Zoom, where they have servers that are facilitating the brokering of the connections between us. And we can do that with an application that's built on Qortal Data Network and is then completely decentralized, and you no longer need that intermediary. And so in every aspect of life where we're dealing with this company or this intermediary that's doing whatever on our behalf and charging us a fee for it, we no longer need that. And so that
your data.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah. They're charging us a fee for providing us a service and also taking whatever data that they feel like from that and using it for whatever other purpose, nonsense advertising that's, directed directly towards you in specific ways. And how are they knowing that other than just knowing exactly what you're doing on your computer? And I find that to be nonsense. Right. So we can alleviate the need for any of that or the availability for any of those kinds of things to take place if the infrastructure system is built the way that Qortal is. And so the launch of Qortal Data Network a couple of days ago was absolutely groundbreaking, absolutely revolutionary, absolutely history in the making, because we are the only blockchain that can do both the application layer and the data layer for applications to be built, right? So in most cases, like for things like Steemit and other blockchains like that, they have the backend, the data itself for when you're typing a message, the message itself is stored on the blockchain, which is good, but the user interface that you're using to put those messages on the blockchain is on a centralized server, on a centralized domain. So that right there makes it so that is then able to be taken down or able to be, taken down in one way or another, right? They could tell the people that they can no longer run this since it's on a domain. Yeah. So those types of things, there's a lot of stuff in the crypto space right now where people are saying that it's decentralized, right? And my definition of decentralized means that you do not have to access anything else other than your computer to make anything take place. And so that eliminates most of the other crypto projects in the space when they're saying that they're decentralized. I disagree, because in order to be actually decentralized, you have to be only accessing your computer. If you're accessing only your computer, nothing else on the internet, no other servers, and you can still make everything happen, then it's decentralized. And that is exactly what Qortal does. We, as the platform that we are, we make it so that every single person who's running Qortal and accessing the Qortal network is running their own node. Every single person on the Quartal network right now is running their own node. They are their own full node, and they are communicating only to their computer, which then facilitates transactions to the blockchain. And that's the only way that they're communicating, right? So there's no need to communicate to any sort of centralized servers whatsoever to make all of the stuff that can happen on top of Quartal happen. So that is, in my definition, the true definition of something that is actually decentralized. If you can do everything by accessing only your computer, then it's decentralized. And so that is one of the underlying principles of Quartal, to make sure that everything is done in that fashion. There's no need for any sort of intermediary, any sort of centralized server, any sort of anything like that to be there in order for all of the things that can take place on top of the network to be able to.
So the privacy and sovereignty aspects of this are truly uncharted in the space right now. It's just, there's never been anything like it. So I'm going to make a wager here that you're going to be simultaneously, before too long, the most loved and hated man in the crypto space.
Yeah, that's right. That is definitely a possibility, right? Like, because I have a hard time holding my tongue. Right. For one thing, I do not like it when people are trying to trick other people into thinking something is decentralized. That bastardizes the technology. It bastardizes blockchain tech. It bastardizes the entire space for me.
And so it's just bad.
If somebody's doing that. Right. It's just like, why, guys? Like, and the only real reason is because they're not in the space for the right reason. They're in the space because they can launch a token. They can own the entirety of that token. They can then do what's called an ICO, which is basically like a public or a company going public. And people can then buy those coins that they created out of thin air for doing nothing. And they can make a bunch of money off of it. And that's really the only reason that I can see for doing things in what I would consider an incorrect fashion. If you're not here just for money, then what are you doing? You're tricking people, saying things are decentralized when they're not. And you, as the team that started this, are the only ones that are really getting any benefit from this. Sure, other people can make a little bit here and there, but it's nothing like the people who launched it. So I don't know. To me, it's all about money. And I do not like things that are all about money, right? And so that is another underlying principle of Quartal, is that we launched the chain from block zero with 0 Qort coins on the chain. Amazing. From that point, people who joined and started minting were the only ones who were starting to create these coins. They all got started from the very first block when the very first coins were minted. The development team, the founders, we got nothing extra from the beginning. All we got was an account that potentially gives us more if we run it for a little bit in the beginning, and that's it, right? Yes, we get a little bit more at the beginning, the founders do, but I think that's fair, right? That's fair. We put a lot of time into this, a lot of effort into it. We get a little bit more at the beginning, we get a little bit more influence in the beginning, but it all levels out as people level up. So it's as fair as it could possibly be, in my opinion.
Is it fair to say that you could have sold this technology for a lot of money?
Sorry, you cut off.
Is it fair to say that you could have sold Qortal for a lot of money? I mean,
oh
you
yes,
certainly walked away from a lot of cash. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So instead of doing things the way that we did, we could have, in theory, done like what a lot of these other people have done, and we would have even been a step ahead because we had a lot of the stuff developed already. They do what's called a white paper.
Surpasses just a token. This is a technology.
Right. Yes, we developed the entire platform before we talked about it. So all of the work in the development that was done before the launch was not really talked about. It was talked about a little bit because I took over the development of a project called Qortal, which was a great starting point, but we ended up basically ripping all of that apart and rewriting it all anyway. But I told the Qortal community that we would allow the people in the Qortal community to come over to Quartal, and that we would do it in a way that's fair and in a way that's not scammy. So we did not do an airdrop. We did not do a pre-mine. We did not do any of this ICOs, any of this nonsense that is literally just there to grab money in the beginning. We did a slow transition from the people who were holding Qortal. They were able to burn their Qortal, and then a slow transition onto the Qortal chain where they got a percentage of the block reward. Every block slowly trickled into their account. So, and that was another thing that I don't think any other blockchain has done, is a transition in that way. And that's another thing that we'll be able to do in the future that other blockchains won't be able to do, is make this happen for other blockchains too. So if say another,
it's almost like a model where I've heard there's a guy named Bitcoin Dan that I get a kick out of sometimes, and he basically compares Bitcoin to a huge sponge that has been dropped into the ocean of fiat, and it's just sucking it all into itself, right? What you're describing is almost the same phenomenon for networks and tokens.
Absolutely, yeah. And that really, and it's the same thing for finances too, or financial stuff, because so we do not have a listing on any centralized exchanges because that's against the ethos of the project as well. Now, if one decides to list us on their own accord, that's their own thing. We didn't facilitate it, right? So the whole thing with me is that as long as I or one of the founders doesn't facilitate something that I don't think is the right way to do, and they don't think is the right way to do it, then that's fine, right? If somebody as a centralized exchange decides on their own accord to list Qrt, fine. But right now, the only way that we trade is in the trade portal, and the trade portal is a P2P cross-blockchain trading platform. So you can literally take and put up Qrt for sale. Someone else with Litecoin or Dogecoin right now, those are the two pairs that we have at the moment, can come and directly trade cross-blockchain and end up with the Qrt and trade it from the Litecoin or the Dogecoin.
How do you do price discovery in that environment?
What's that?
How do you do price discovery in that environment?
Well, it's a fully open market, right? And what's really unique about it, well, there's a couple different things that are unique about it, but one of the main things that's unique about it is that there's no way to put up what's called a buy wall or a sell wall, right? So it's basically more like a bulletin board with a bunch of orders put all over it. You can pick any order from that board and buy it regardless of anything else. So all the sell orders, yes, you can arrange them by lowest to highest price or by lowest to highest quantity, whatever you want, right? But you can choose whichever order you want from there, click it and click buy. So it's going to lead to a very interesting scenario. And so far, and I'm really curious to see how it plays out long term, because nothing like this has ever happened before. So in so many different aspects, Qortal is doing the first, right?
It's like,
yeah, it's a totally free market.
Money,
absolutely, yeah. And what has been seen so far, right? All of the other markets are going crazy, up and down, and like getting dumped and da da da. The Qortal market has just been continually trending upward. There really has not been anything else happening, it's just been continually to trend upward. And that, I think, is probably how it's going to continue to play out, because more people will come in, there will be more orders being purchased. And as long as more than 3,000 coins are purchased on a daily basis, the price has to go up. There are only 3.3 million Qort in existence right now, which is absolutely insane. If you look at any other project, right? We have a very small fraction of the total amount of coins that these other projects have. Most of them are in the billions. Some of them are in multi-millions, hundreds of millions. We only have 3.3 million Qort. And at the current price, there's $1.60, $1.75 in dollar value, which is only calculated from converting Litecoin to dollar value, because we do not trade directly to dollars.
Right.
Cannot do that. Yeah.
You should put a core what would you even call it? Some kind of comparison to maybe BTC and some other things to show the different dynamic with the graph, with this upward trend, because that would be visually shocking to a lot of people.
Right. And yeah, we do have a new Explorer that was built by one of our new community developers, and it's called explorer.qortalnodes.live. And on that site, you can see the charts for this month and previous months. So you can actually look at it and you can see that we don't have any direct comparisons up yet, but that would definitely be interesting, because like I said, our market has just been completely unaffected by whatever's going on in the outside world. It's very interesting because we just keep trending slowly upward. And regardless of the price of Litecoin going up and down, up and down, up and down, it doesn't matter. Our price just keeps going upward. And it's really interesting to see. And I think that, as more people come and see this and realize that this technology is not just a pipe dream, and that it's actually doing all these things that I am very excited about explaining to people, and realize what this platform could be in the future, it's a no-brainer to want to hold some Qort, in my opinion. And you can obviously get started minting for free. Come in and speak to another level 5 or higher minter and get what's called a sponsorship key. That's all you need to do. You don't need to buy any hardware. You don't need to buy anything. If you have even an older cheap laptop that's sitting around in the corner of your house, you can use that. It's really low entry point as far as hardware goes. And you can come in and start minting. If you don't have any money at all, you want to hold some Qort anyway, come in, start minting, talk to the community, say, yo, I would like to help in one way or another, like what you're doing here by interviewing me and helping to get the word out. That's something where I would be happy to throw people Qort for doing those types of things, even though that's not something we've discussed, but right. That's also a possibility, right? And I'm always giving people Qort for different things, right? If they're, yo, I developed this really cool graphic, right? Oh, awesome, thanks, here's some Qort for that. And that's how I want to see the network continue to function. If people can come in, contribute their time and effort, and earn from it, and directly by minting or indirectly by others, donating to them for the work that they've done that benefits everyone. And that's another thing that I don't like, is anybody asking me about direct investment into me and Crowetic hardware development and stuff that I'm doing personally. I'm like, I don't really like that. I would prefer if everyone just invested into Qort, because then the entire network benefits, right? And that makes me feel better, right? I want everyone to benefit. That's the whole point of this platform being developed in the first place, is that everyone should be coming up together, helping to develop this together, and, making the future that I think a lot of us would like to see a reality, right? And that's one of the other core things that we really try to push home, is that this is all community developed. This is all run and developed, and everything that we've done so far has been done thanks to the community. Most of our developers right now, the ones who are doing the most work, are developers who were not part of the original team. They have been around since after Genesis, when they saw the platform and liked it and decided to come help us out. So it's already working out exactly the way that I had hoped it would. And I see that doing nothing but getting better and faster, stronger in the future. So it's really cool to see.
The way you're doing it strikes me from a philosophical perspective as a beautiful way to turbocharge this mutually beneficial network, and have it be very organic and very win-win, very horizontal as opposed to vertical. I also sometimes speak about sort of like an Aquarian model, that's very equal and distributed in that way. And just everything you're doing is in alignment with itself, and that can only be a good thing. Now, I have another philosophical discussion I would love to have with you. But before we go there, can we clarify minting versus mining, and so that people understand this concept? I mean, it's pretty straightforward once you get the basic concept.
Yeah, absolutely. So instead of needing all this hardware, like we've discussed already, you just need any computer that functions as what's called a node, right? A node is just any computer running the Qortal software. So running the Qortal core on your computer turns your computer into what's called a node. If you have the software running on your computer, then the next step that you need to do to become a minter is just talk to someone who's a level 5 or higher. They will give you what's called a sponsorship key. Once you assign that key to your node, your account will start increasing in blocks minted. Basically, every block that goes by, you submit a signature with that key assigned to your node that proves it on behalf of your account, and you get credit for it. So once you've reached level 1, you create your own minting key, and then you start getting rewarded. It's very straightforward. You're literally just proving that your node is there, and that your node is synchronized, and that your node is available to help process transactions. Basically, your node's online. It's like, here I am. I'm going to submit my signature proving that I'm here, and that's about it, right? So you just need to have a node running. Have it connected. Yes, it has to be connected to the internet right now, but in the future, we're hoping to not need the internet either. We're going to be doing what's called a mesh network, which will allow people to connect directly to one another without the need for internet service providers. But that's a whole nother topic that we can take another hour on individually.
I know.
But
I was following Kim.com. I think that was who was talking about that a lot back in the day, and it just never really materialized. So I was really happy to hear you start using that language again, because it's a project that I've hoped that would really come in either independently or in combination with something like Quartal. And that just a mesh network itself is a revolutionary technology.
Right. It absolutely is. And so we want to get away from the need for any centralization. And in order to do that fully, you have to also eliminate the internet service providers, because they are the ones that are holding the keys, so to speak, to allow you to connect to the rest of the world. Right. And so we need to be rid of that as well. Like, so in order to make this philosophy play out completely, we need no internet service providers as well. And that's something that we will get there. Right now, there are over 4,000 nodes on the network now, which is great, right? But that's not quite enough to make something like a worldwide mesh network a reality. And it will start out in a smaller sense.
I know that this could be maybe regionally specified, but how many do you need for a worldwide mesh network?
I mean, it really depends too, right? It depends on what kind of wireless technology you're using to communicate. And then it would say from there, okay, how far of a distance can this node communicate to this one? And then you'd have to have them spaced out. And so what it's going to start with probably is that individual pockets of smaller mesh networks, then with a couple of them acting as a gateway to the traditional internet. And then from there, it can kind of grow in different places. And then eventually they'll start communicating directly to each other, and they won't need that gateway to the internet anymore, right? And so there's a couple different long-range wireless technologies. There's one called LoRaWAN, which a lot of people have been talking about, which is actually a mesh network that allows for WAN, which is internet connectivity. And so those types of networks and those communication protocols are ones that we can also build support for. But the ultimate goal for Qortal is to have our own communications protocol and our own mesh network. Now, we can have gateways to communicate to other mesh networks and gateways to communicate to the internet to start with, but eventually we want a network that is not reliant upon anybody else, and a communication protocol that does not use IP addresses, because IP addresses are tied with a location, right? So if you want something where you have the ability to stay truly anonymous, you need something that communicates without the need for an IP address, right? And so that is something that I would like to personally see, is a communication protocol that does not rely upon IP addresses, so that people would then have actual privacy when they connect to this network. And then that same applies for some things like privacy transactions, which we will have privacy transactions in the future. And we're also planning on building support for Pirate Chain and Monero and multiple different privacy coins, so that you can use those, right? So you can use those in the trade portal and trade for them. And we can then build an application that trades back and then trades back again, so that the court is then anonymized until we build our own anonymous transaction type, which is definitely a possibility on top of Qortal as well. So our underlying platform is actually more flexible than people realize. And most of the time, flexibility plus blockchain don't really go together, because most blockchains are tied to a specific algorithm. Like Bitcoin is SHA-256, right? So if SHA-256 has any sort of issues or gets broken in any sort of way, all of the mining hardware that only runs that algorithm is then a brick. And so changing that algorithm for Bitcoin is basically not a possibility. And on Qortal, we use multiple different types of algorithms in different places, in different areas inside of Qortal. We can modify any of those at any time. And since we also have one of the only, if not the only blockchain that can automatically update the entire network, as long as you've got that turned on, you just literally don't have to do anything, and your node automatically updates to the next version. So you don't have to continually focus on, oh, what new version is available, stuff like that. And so we have made that as easy as possible for people too. So in theory, you install Qortal one time and you don't have to do anything else. It automatically updates, and it just keeps going, right? So that is the main thing for usability that I wanted to see, is that we have the ability to auto update the chain. And this is done with a developer group on the chain actually signing a transaction that then makes the auto update happen. And 60% of the developer group on the chain has to say yes to this transaction before the network will update. So that will lead to some really interesting things with governance that we can do in the future too. That plus the voting system for people to have, input on what's happening with development. And it's going to be really interesting to see where that goes. So we're not quite to all of that yet, but we do now have the ability to host websites, which is absolutely incredible. There is one little bug that we're working out now, that some data doesn't necessarily get to the people every single time, but this is to be expected when we're launching something brand new. But we have actually already fixed it, and the next version of Quartal will be live within the next couple of days. But we now have avatars in Q chat, so you can put a little picture there with your avatar and use that in Q chat, and you can actually put up websites. Now, simpler ones are working better right now, but after the next update in the next couple of days, pretty much any website that's built in a static fashion, which just means HTML, CSS, JS, and no external links. Now, that's a thing that people were talking with me about today, is that why are we blocking external links, right? External links linking to the traditional internet from a site hosted on QDN is a bad idea in multiple ways. We want to eventually not have reliance upon the internet at all, right? So if we have links that are tied to the internet and we break that reliance upon the internet, then multiple sites on Quartal Data Network could then be not functioning correctly. So that's one of the main things. Plus, the internet's full of all kinds of exploits and nonsense. And so the main thing is putting the data all on Quartal Data Network makes a lot more sense and is much more secure, and will make it so that we are then independent from any other network. Gateways to other things can still take place, and you can still use a Quartal node as a proxy if you want to put a website on a traditional domain that's hosted on top of Quartal. That's possible, but going the other way is not possible, and that will not. You could have
called the network something like Internet is synonymous or something like that, because you're basically putting people through a rehab here and developing an ecosystem that is self-supporting and self-sustaining.
Right, exactly.
One question I had, there's so much depth of thought behind this, and I know it wasn't all of you, but one can imagine just hearing you speak that a lot of it came from you. Another question I had was, if you're doing a mesh network at some point down the line, with all the considerations around radiation and electromagnetics and all of that, how do you create a network like that that's actually not harmful to human beings?
So since we haven't really started on that path of the mesh network yet, I can't really specifically answer those types of questions yet. However, I do know that some frequencies are more harmful than others. Some frequencies could potentially be not harmful at all. Some frequencies could potentially be beneficial, right? So it really just is going to depend on which technologies we use and which people are worried about using those technologies and so forth. So initially, I'm sure that we'll definitely use the existing wireless and existing Bluetooth technologies, which I know a lot of people don't like. but it is what it is, right? We have these technologies available. Almost every single computer already has them. So they don't need to buy an external hardware component in order to make the mesh network happen. But that being said, multiple different types of wireless communications will be able to be used. And I know that in the future, there will be technologies that we don't even know about right now, or ones that don't use those types of technologies at all and can still provide data in a similar fashion without cables, right? So really, it doesn't matter which wireless technology we use, if it's one that uses frequencies like that, or if it's one that uses something completely different in quantum or whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. As long as we can establish a connection and we have a protocol to communicate over that connection, it should be fine, right? So we haven't really gotten that far yet, and we're not like directly focused on building the mesh network yet. But when we get there, and there's a lot of people who are already talking about it in the Qortal community, I've just been kind of following along. I don't really have any input at this point because I haven't done all of the research and testing and prototyping and stuff yet. So with me, I only really talk about stuff that I have firsthand experience with. And so I don't really know the answer to that question yet. But we will have multiple answers for that question when we start working on that.
I imagine it'll be a situation along the lines of, if you build it, he will come. Somebody will show up with the idea. I have this pet concept that you could use things like really healthy musical scales, like the solfeggio scale, which I actually use in my
I like that idea,
called the regenetics method, and actually build the entire architecture on some kind of sonic blueprint that is really good for human beings.
Right. That's what I was saying. Yeah, there's a bunch of different frequencies. Some are good, some are bad. If we use some of the good ones, that would be great, right? Because then nobody's worried about bad things happening. They're actually like, wow, this network makes me feel better, which would be fantastic, right? So yeah, I mean,
it would actually make the interactions on the network more harmonious.
That would be great.
Not just for individuals, it would create a sense of community, because people would be really tapping into something very fundamental and life supporting. Now, I have a question for you, Jason.
Sure.
One of the schools of thought that I find really interesting in looking at these crazy times that we're in is that we're in a transition from a traditional centralized society, which some scholars have called a mass society. And that's where we got the big cities and the big corporations and the top-down models and all of that, so all that entails. And what's happening is we're moving into what these same scholars call a network society or networked society. It's very funny, because Quartal seems to be in this historical moment where there is a breakdown of one system that is a top-down kind of monolithic system, and the birth of this truly decentralized system. So it seems to me that you have history on your side. But what I wanted to ask is, just for people out there who might have questions about the man and the problem with the monolithic mass society still having power, how can they come after you? How could they come after you? And I don't mean you personally, but I mean Qortal. Okay. What could they actually do to shut this thing down?
The only thing that they could do to actually make it so that Qortal does not function at this very moment only would be to literally shut the internet down. They can't really do anything else. All the communications and data is encrypted. There's not really anything specifically that they could block. In order to connect, you have to do a memory hard POW in order to connect from one node to another. So all that information is then taken care of that way. So there's really if they blocked our ports, we could switch ports. The only thing that they could actually do is literally make it so the internet doesn't work at all. And I don't think that they're really going to be doing that. They are actually probably more reliant on the internet than we are. So I think it's just kind of a really far-fetched thing to think that they're going to shut the entire internet down. I mean, places like China, we have plenty of nodes in China right now. When they have Bitcoin banned, they have cryptocurrency banned, and they have a firewall that blocks almost everything. And guess what? We still have hundreds of nodes in China. So, I mean, the only thing that they can do is literally turn the internet off. And I really don't think that that's something that they're planning on doing, because what else are they going to get all their nonsense out on, right? Like, they need it.
Well, that I think that's what I mean. I've heard you speak about this before, and I just wanted other people out there to have that question answered because it's such a problem with all of the censorship and the control that's going on right now. Obviously, the freedom aspects of this technology are massive, but I guess some people might be concerned that some of the crime aspects or the darker stuff that could go on an uncontrolled network. And I just wondered if you could just speak to that. I mean, I'm kind of an anarchist, a libertarian, so I'm probably fairly closely aligned with where you're coming from here. But for other people, what would you say to that?
So, okay, so there's a couple things to really take note of, right? First of all, Qortal is not a data hosting company. There's no company attached to it whatsoever. So any of the data that potentially goes onto the Qortal data network, we don't either know about it or necessarily care about it either. The only data that you can actually see on the network is data that you specifically click to see, right? So if you don't click to see the data is completely encrypted and chunked on the back end. So anything else that's going on, you can't tell and you cannot see it, you cannot view it, you cannot decrypt it. There's nothing you can do about it unless you specifically follow or specifically view a website. That website's data will never come to you. So really, it's more about people asking these questions. Are you the type of person who's going to be looking at these kinds of things? Then you might have to worry about it, right? Like if you're the type of person who's going to be going for these dark, whatever you're worried about, right? If you're going after them, then sure, you have a reason to be worried about it. If not, then people who are not, then they're never even going to know it exists if it does exist. So this infrastructure platform has nothing to do with us trying to police what everybody is using it for, right? It really doesn't matter to us what you're using it for. And it really doesn't matter to any of the other nodes either, because the only thing that's going to be on your node is what you choose to be on your node. So if you follow a creator, then that creator's data will then be on your node and you'll be able to view it. If you don't, then none of that data is viewable to you anyway. So it really doesn't matter what people use the network for. That's really the best way that I can explain it, is that you're never going to know, you're never going to see it unless you're specifically seeking it out. And if you're doing that, then you're probably not the one who's worried about it, right? Like, so I don't know. It's really a completely different way of looking at things. We have no way to know all of the data that's going to be on there anyway. We don't have a way to view it unless we specifically view it. And now if we specifically view it and find out there's something that we don't like there's an option that you can block. If you block, then that data will never go through your node again, whether it's encrypted or not. So it's cool. Really, you have full control over what's going on your node. If you find a name or even an avatar, right, that you don't like, person puts up some horse parts as an avatar or something, and you're like, oh, wow, that's a little much for me. You can just go into data management and block. And then you will never see that image again. That none of that data will ever pass through your node again. Nothing, right? So we really are trying to give everybody complete individual sovereignty. So really, if you find something on the Quartal data network that you don't like, then by all means, you can block it. Or we can potentially come up with an idea for a board where people can put up information. This, I found this and this, I don't really like this, da, 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 da. So people are aware of it, right? But other than that, like, there's really nothing that we can do as the development team to prevent any data or any other set of data to be able to be on the network or not. Like, we don't have any control over that. We cannot influence that in any way at all. Like, so we can't censor data. We can't do anything on anyone's behalf. So your node, you can censor which data you decide to censor if you find data that you don't like or whatever. And if you block it, that data will be completely deleted, completely removed, and never will any transactions from that name ever go through your account again. So, I mean, I don't think there's really much to worry about along those lines. Like, yeah, that's really all I can say about it.
For you, but it brought up a question
Yeah.
for me. Did you ever watch a show? I think it's a Netflix show. It was kind of like the Mad Men for the early computing days. It's called *Halt and Catch Fire*. Are you familiar?
No, I've never heard of that one. No.
It's really, really well done, in my opinion, and it's absolutely fascinating. And it basically centers on the arms race to create the first really good search engine, right? Okay. So you can see where that could go with a plot and characters and companies vying against each other and all that. So it's really, really fascinating. And it's fictionalized to a certain extent, but it's close enough to what actually happened so that it's relevant historically speaking.
Right.
So if you're on Qortal, what do you do for search engines? How do you actually find content?
Okay, so as it sits right now, there is no search engine really possible, right? We are building a search function that will allow you to right now search names so that if someone says, oh, I've got data up on this name, you'll be able to search for a name and click it. In the very near future, we will have meta information available to post with a website. So you'll be able to see this website is blah, 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 and it'll explain about it and potentially even have a preview of what that website is and so forth. So right now, like searching the global data network, not really a possibility.
But it is a possibility, right? Like it could be developed.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it
and
could.
it probably will be developed because there's it has the same financial incentives for someone creating a product.
Right. Totally. And I mean, the thing is that you have to look at everything completely differently on Qortal. So you won't be a company owning this search engine. You won't be able to really make anything from owning it because you won't really own it. It will be a thing available for everybody to use. So, but you can definitely get donations for building it, right? So it's, I don't know, people have to really kind of wrap their head around this whole new way of thinking about how things are done and how people earn money and why and all of those kinds of things, right? And so we can also do what's called a crowdfund, which is with a Q, and that is a decentralized automated smart contract that runs on top of the chain. A person can put that out there, explain what they want this court for, right, and a total amount that they're seeking, and people can donate to it. If it gets met the goal, then it gets given to the person who started it. If the goal is not met, then everybody who donated gets refunded automatically. So that will be something that we put out live on Quartal very soon. That was already live on the Quora chain. We just have to kind of modify that smart contract and make it work on top of Quartal. But since now we have the ability to do websites and stuff, we will be able to do a more robust version of that too. And so that will be really interesting. But yeah, people just need to kind of wrap their heads around working in this new way. It's not more like, yeah, we're going to have the patents to this thing that we built and we're just going to be the only ones who earn from it. No, there's no such thing as patents, no such thing as copyrights. However, you will get the recognition for doing something first because it'll be there in the history of the blockchain. So it's just a different way of looking at how all of this is done, like from the economic side to the internet itself and to how this data is distributed to everybody and to how this is all accessed by everyone. And yeah, there's a bunch, basically anything you can think of. Any application that's already built on the traditional internet can be built on top of Quartal, but just done slightly differently, right? So there's definitely tons of room for people to do crowdfunds and make a bunch of money building these things, or to continually get donations, or even potentially build services that do one function or another that people will pay court for, right? So, and we do want to build multiple different types of markets where you'll be able to, this is really, really, really cool. The names market, right? So right now, what a name is on Quartal, a registered name, is you can use it as a username. So you can use it as your typical username for communications and chat and so forth, or you can use it as a domain name, which is not called a domain name, but you can use it as what would be referred to as a domain name on top of Quartal. And so that name will have your website, it'll have your app, and yeah, when we launch Q apps, which is a little bit, a couple weeks away, maybe a little bit longer, we will have the ability to do an app, a website, all of the content, all of the followers, a Git repo, and all of it can be sold at once. So you can build an entire brand on top of Quartal with an application, all the website, everything, all of the followers, all of the content, everything all at once can then be sold in the names market. Now that in itself should make any of the capitalist types very happy and very excited because the potential there is unlimited. You can do this, build that name, build that brand with all the stuff on it, with all the followers following it, and sell all of that all at once. And the person who buys it does not have to change hosting. They don't have to change anything. All they can do is now they own the name.
That person has built the node access to all of these other members of the network, right? So that information is already flowing through X.
Yes, it's already there. So then if you change the owner of it, right, you own that software and application that's then cloned on however many thousands of nodes already. And so you've already got that with thousands of nodes of redundancy running for you. And if you buy it, then you can then be the one who edits it from that point on, right? So it's completely incredible what's going to be possible with that. So buying and selling names is going to be a huge thing. And then what else is going to be coming up is the data market. Now, right now, the only data that you can put up on the Qortal data network is public data, so websites and stuff like that, right? So data that's available to anyone who wants to click it. So what is going to be coming next is private data. So say you have a bunch of pictures of your own that you don't want everybody to be able to have access to, but you'd like to store them on the redundant, unhackable distributed network that we have. That's going to be a possibility in the very near future too. And now that will open up the doors for the data market. And the data market, you'll be able to say, as a node who has X amount of data space available, you can say, I would like this much quart per however many blocks for this much data. And then person can come say, okay, I'll take that and get however many copies of it that they want from different people and say, okay, now I have 6 redundant copies for my backup for my pictures, right? And so that will be a thing in the future too.
Network? Is this a replacement?
What's that?
A replacement for a cloud network? Is that
yes, exactly right? So a private, yeah, but this one will actually be private, and the only person that can view or edit the files is the person that put them there. It's the same thing with the public data right now, but we will also have the ability for groups to control data too, so that if you want to have an admin of a group that can edit your website with you, that will be a possibility in the future too. But right now, the only person who can modify the data is the name that owns it. So it's the same idea, but tied to private data instead. So you'll be able to use it for your backing up of your pictures and your music files and whatever you want that no one else needs to have access to unless specifically shared with them, that kind of thing, right? Just like a cloud, yeah. But not on a server, but on nodes and completely encrypted and chunked so that nobody can modify it other than you. So it's a much, much better system. And not only that, it gets faster and stronger as more people use it. So it's really, really, really cool.
I mean,
same thing with the websites.
Qortal's like that by itself, right? Qortal just gets more robust as time goes by. So I've been having this conversation with Mike Winner, who's involved very, very intimately in the Quartal project for people.
Yeah, he's also a founder.
Yeah. So I'll put a link to an interview that I had with him. It's been a couple of months, but it was a really good interview, very philosophical and deep, as Mike is. But he and I have been talking about this idea that I ran by him. I do a lot of things, but I'm also a painter. So you have a great face, right? And I would love to do portraits of people in the consciousness movement. Maybe I would call it like consciousness warriors, like to celebrate people, to bring attention to people who are doing fascinating and interesting things for human freedom and our ability to overcome, our obstacles. So that brings up a 3-letter word, NFT.
So the names market will replace NFTs. The names market, you'll be able to put not only a digital ownership certificate, you'll be able to put whatever you want on this with a digital ownership certificate with a bunch of other things. All of it can then be sold by that name, right? So it's like an NFT on crack.
An NFT, right now, a lot of it uses the Ether rails to run on, right?
Yeah, don't even get me started on Ethereum.
Yeah, right. But what they're doing there is allowing you to use a smart contract protocol so that you have your rights secured to the image. Supposedly it's sold to somebody who then owns the image, but then when it's resold, you as an artist actually can make a percentage, like a royalty percentage on future sales of your art, which in the traditional art world, good luck with that. It's just not going to happen,
right? So okay, I mean, those types of things could totally be developed. Like that would be just an extra feature of the names market, right? So yeah, we could totally do those same types of things if people are interested in that.
I think that would be very, very popular base. I'm reading a book right now called the NFT Handbook, and I'm not saying I'm a dyed in the wool NFT or anything like that. I'm learning about it, but it has many, many, many applications for all kinds of levels of cultural production. And,
Right.
I'm sharing this with
It's a
Mike,
great
and
idea. I
Mike
just
is
don't
like,
like the
well,
way
you
that
know
they
that
did
you
it.
could NFT a tree on a farm, right? And someone could
Right.
actually have own a tree on your farm with a little chip on it, that identifies it as the NFT. And then people
Right.
might get perks and come visit the farm and spend time with their tree and, pick the fruit from it or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, of course Mike would think of this, from
Yeah.
with
I
his
mean, I
background.
like that's a lot of the things, right, with the crypto spaces. A lot of the concepts are great, but the way that they've actually made them function are not so great. So that's really the main issue that I have with a lot of this stuff, is that they just don't execute them correctly, in my opinion. So the names market will be able to do all of this and much, much, much more than you could ever dream of with a simple NFT. And yeah, any of the added functionality, features, yada, 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 that you would like to see, that's what the voting system is for. So we will be able to vote on which new functionality gets added, and the community can decide, right? So that's really, yeah, that we can do all of that and a lot more with the names market and
That's very
registering.
exciting. Very.
Yeah.
So if I'm wanting to get started, like I'm somebody that I don't have a big technical background. Let's say I know about the Cortector, and that's one option, a kind of plug and play option. Let's just start there. Okay. Let's say if I wanted to go to, it was CROWETIC.com. Is that right?
Yes, correct. So that's my company's website. And we are the ones who built the first Cortector, and we just called it that. And no, it's not copyrighted. No, it's not patented. It's all open source. We will literally share every bit of how we built this with anybody who's looking to build one themselves. But this is for people who don't really want to do that and would rather purchase one directly from us. They can do that as well. So yeah, these devices are built from a Raspberry Pi 4. They are built from an 8 GB Raspberry Pi 4, and they have a 500 GB solid state drive running for the data, which makes them a lot faster than if you were to run them on a SD card. So we've made them basically run as efficiently as possible. And we also have our own kernel that was built from one of our developers, which is a customized Linux Debian-based kernel that is built specifically to run Qortal and to run cryptographic applications much more efficiently. And so we have that little device will outperform a 24-thread Xeon server that I have in my garage. So that tells you the level of development that went into the actual operating system for this thing. And we also have that up on GitHub and available for everybody as well. So if they want to buy their own, they can do that with our operating system too.
You mean the kernel as distinguishable from the Cortector?
Yeah, the Linux kernel, the operating system, the core of the operating system is a custom one that we put together. Yeah, the core of the operating system, it's Linux, but it's a custom version that our developer built, and he is an absolute badass. And so
if I have a Cortector,
Linux kernel runs great.
mint, right? I can.
You can do it on any device. Any device.
But let's just use the Cortector as an example because it seems to be kind of easy. So if I have let's say I'm a laptop guy and I want to be able to get on the Quartal network, but I also want to be minting. But I also, I want to maybe sometimes I want to take my laptop and go away and not have to carry the Cortector around. Can you walk me through how I would do these things?
So, okay, so the Cortector is meant to be just basically a desktop computer that runs all the time because it takes
need a monitor and keyboard for it.
You can't. Yeah, our recommended method is, because for new people, it's much easier to have a keyboard mouse monitor that you can hook up to it and you actually use it like a regular desktop computer. And I will have a package available eventually that has that and even a solar panel and a battery and a bunch of stuff, right? But right now, yes, it's a desktop computer, but you can also use it as just a little device that sits in the corner and not connected to anything, and you can remote into it with a laptop or whatever else. We just don't necessarily recommend that because we can't guarantee that every single person's network is configured correctly and that this is going to be able to work perfectly for everyone. So the best way that we recommend, especially for new users, is to be able to connect it to a keyboard mouse monitor. Now you can connect it to a television or anything with an HDMI port, right? So it comes with the HDMI cable for you. So all you need to do is literally plug it into any screen. plug it into a TV or a monitor, whatever, anything that has HDMI. And if it has speakers, it'll also work with audio through that setup. So if you have a TV, it works great. So you can literally just plug it into a TV, the internet, and power, which takes about as much power as a phone charger. So it takes no power at all to run, essentially, and leave the thing running all day long. Now, if you're, wanting to use the network remotely right now, we do not have a mobile app yet, but I'm testing one as we speak. That's just a simple wallet, but we will have the functionality of everything that's in the UI in a mobile version too for phones and stuff like that. So that's really where we're going, is that we want the Cortector is meant to be a device that just sits at your house and runs all the time and takes like no power to do so that you can always have your node running to be minting and always have access to the Quartal network no matter what. And you can always run a node on your laptop too, or you can make your laptop communicate with the node on the Cortector just by establishing what's called an SSH tunnel, which is a single command on Mac or a single config and a click on Windows to establish that tunnel. And then you can use that device's core, so you don't even have to run anything on your laptop. Or you can run a core on your laptop too, and the UI on your laptop too, and whatever you want to do, really. It's very flexible. If you're using the Cortector to run your node all the time, then you would most likely just establish a tunnel to that node from your laptop and run the UI on your laptop, so that you don't have to remote into the Cortector and use remote software to do it, which makes things a little bit more slow. So it's easier just to run the UI on your laptop and then make a tunnel that connects to the Cortector for the core. And it's basically the same thing as running the core on the laptop, but the core is running on the Cortector. So as far as doing things mobile right now, we do not have mobile apps. So if you're using your laptop and you have your node running on your laptop too, that's fine. That's what I do with this laptop. This one gets turned on and off all the time. So when I have it on, like I do now, I have my Quartal node on here running too, so I can do anything that I want on the Quartal network on this thing. And then when I turn it off, it just falls behind a little bit on synchronization. When turn it back on, it catches back up and you're good to go. It takes, a couple minutes to catch back up usually, unless this thing's been off for months or whatever. But we will have
the independent Cortector going at the same time, or
yeah, I've always got the Cortector running downstairs. Gotcha. And yeah, so that thing's always on, always connected, always running. And because it takes no power to run anyways, you can run like 20 of these things and it's not going to inflict your power bill at all. So yeah, leaving that thing running all the time is what you're going to do usually, because then you're going to have your minting key assigned to that, so that thing's continually minting for you and earning court for you. So basically making money for you, which is great, right? You have this little device, takes no power at all, and it's making money for you. And so that you'll leave on all the time. If you have a node that you run on your laptop, you'll turn it off. And then you'll just turn it back on when you're using it, just to make transactions or whatever, communicate on the network, whatever you want to do, and then turn it back off again. And you always got your other node over there running and minting for you. And you can always use that node directly with a keyboard, mouse, monitor, or you can also remote into it, or you can set up a remote tunnel so you don't have to actually remote in. There's so many different options as far as setting it up. All you have to do is have a node running to be able to communicate to the network. So since we don't have any sort of hosted nodes set up for anyone to access, they have to run their own, right? So you have to run your own node. You can run multiple at house. You can run multiple that you shut off and turn back on, whatever. But if you're going to be minting, you're going to want to have your node on all the time, so that you're getting as much credit and earning as much court as you can for doing that, right? So having a node like the Cortector that's running 24/7 is a good idea, especially if you're minting. And if you want to build one of these things yourself, it'll cost you less, obviously, than buying one from us, because we have to, make a little bit of profit for doing this. And 20% of the profit that we make from these devices actually goes directly to Quartal development. So that's another reason to purchase one from us if you don't have the will to build one yourself, or even if you do, but you want to support the team that's actually building Quartal. That is something that you get as an added bonus by buying a device from us. So ultimately, yeah, you want one that's running all the time if you're minting, especially, so that you just have a node that's running, because it's the whole point of minting, is to have a node that's running. So if you don't have a node running, you're not getting rewarded for the blocks that you missed. So it's a good idea, definitely, to have one.
Now, I mean, one of my New Year's resolutions is to get up and running on Quartal. So if I do have any questions, I know you're a busy guy, but would you be willing to help me out a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm always in the tech support answering questions. And we have multiple different groups. We have one in Telegram. We have a Discord server with multiple channels inside of that.
Awesome.
And obviously inside of QChat too. So like we have our own communications platform inside of Qortal called QChat. And if you manage to set your node up yourself and get into there, we can help you there too. I'm in all three locations as much as possible, answering questions. And if you like send me a private message and I don't necessarily see it immediately, just ping me in one of the Telegram groups if you're messaging me on Telegram or in Discord in the general chat, and I will see it there because I get a lot of PMs. So sometimes I don't have a response time that's very quick. But if people ping me in those groups, then it like, yo, check it out and look at the PM, and I'll definitely help you out. But normally, anybody asking questions in the tech support group can get attention from someone, whether it's me or one of the other techs that are always in there helping people out. But if you would like me specifically to help you, I'm more than happy to do that. And yeah, just let me know if you have any issues, right?
Oh, I appreciate that. Now I'll be putting this video up, various platforms and podcasts and that kind of thing. So I hope you get some good exposure, and maybe down the line a little bit after I've had a chance to get on and on Quartal and have some questions and some experiences to share, we could have another chat. I think people might like to see the evolution of getting involved on the network.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I would like to see it too, because I am always interested to see people's first like opinions on, what did they like about it? What did they not like about it? What would they like to see? And that's the whole point of what we're doing with the voting system, where people will actually be able to contribute towards the future of where this thing's going. Because not even us as the development team really know the exact future of what Quartal is going to be, because it's going to be so massive that we can't really accurately predict those types of things. So the community is going to be a huge asset in making all this stuff actually a reality and making all these things that people will like, right? So yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, I'll be putting links in the show notes, and I'll get this up in the next day or so. And if you want to share this video, feel free to, and I'll let you know when it's up. And this was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and I hope other people are as jazzed about this as I am. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. If you want to send me the actual video, I'll actually host it on top of QDN.
Sure, I'll send it to you. It might take me about a day or so to get it together, because I have to convert it and all that. You know how that works. But
yeah, but I'm
putting
putting videos up on my website on QDN so that people can see that video hosting is already possible. So I want to start putting as many videos as possible up there. So if you want to send that to me, I'll put it up on QDN too.
Okay, I will. Well, listen, thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much for what you're doing. I really love what you're about, and I hope I can continue to support you.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you.
All right, take care, man.
See ya.